This is my first interview on my Canadian 80s and 90s group, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Vince Ditrich. I hope I said that right.
You did?
And he was the drummer from my all time favorite band, Spirit of the West. And thanks for joining me today. Much appreciated.
Very happy to be here.
I guess that what I wanted to start was you were in Spirit of the West for at least 25 years, maybe more.
Yeah, I think it was 30. We still exist as a company, so it's still ongoing. We're just not playing.
So when did you first start playing music, like as a kid? Like when did you first start, like or getting?
Oh, I showed deep interest in music as a toddler, actually, as a little one. Pots and pans, and my dad was a music teacher and a military band master, and he had a band of his own. So, it was a no-brainer. And he bought me a little drum kit, for Christmas, and I learned how to operate that pretty well after a really couple of months. And so for my fifth birthday, he got me a professional drum kit, and by my sixth birthday, I was playing a little bit with his band. I would come up and do a song or two with his band.
And
So
what kind of music would that have been?
it was old dance music in southern Alberta.
Yeah.
It was polkas and waltzes and schottisches and foxtrots. Just that's what it was. And I learned how to play all the old time music with all the old time guys. And there was a revolving cast of characters that would play these various gigs. And I learned how to play with other people constantly and learned how to play all these different feels and tempos. And by about age 9, I think I was his full time drummer. So.
And when did your own personal taste start taking over? Like, who were your early influences when you wanted to go like into your own direction playing music?
Well, I mean, there was definitely some. I wouldn't call it peer pressure, but it wasn't pressure, but it was a full awareness of what was going on in music at that time in pop music. So I would listen very carefully to whatever was on the radio that struck my fancy. But already by that point, as with any young musician, you hear things and you go, well, that's outside the norms of what I expected. And you figure out who's drumming on that or who wrote that song or who produced it. You just learn a lot about the personnel involved with creating the music that you like. And so I just found out a lot about guys like Jeff Porcaro and Steve Gadd and all the big LA guys and a few New York guys. And as a kid, I just kept trying to learn from them and play what they played and adapt it. Sometimes you can't quite hear because of the mix or the sound of the record, and you come up with something that's an approximation that in the end is different, is quite different and sometimes original, but it kind of fits the hole that it fit into, or that was opened up for it. And I don't know, it's just mostly self-taught. I played with a lot of players, and you learn a lot from playing with other players of varying degrees of sophistication. Some were very, very good, and some were not. And you learn how to play, how to learn from really good players while playing with them, and you also learn how to kind of help not as good players by covering for them, and that was a huge part of my education.
So when did you? Who were some of the people you might have played with before you got into the band full time, like on
Oh,
recording
before
sessions?
Spirit? Oh, well, I moved to Vancouver in 1986. I had been playing, what would you call it, top 40 bands in Western Canada, where you would go in and you'd play for a week at a bar. That was back in the days before DJs took over everything, and there would be live music at every major place, and sometimes in a big city like Vancouver or Calgary, you'd have 10, 15 bands playing, and I was playing in those, and we would just go and go and go, and I was playing 300 days a year for several years, and that makes you pretty good too, consistency. But then when I moved to Vancouver, I think my first really good gig was with Long John Baldry, a legendary bluesman.
Right.
I auditioned for his tour in '87, and I got the gig, and I was the youngest one by quite a few years, and I learned a lot about the madness. He loved madness. He loved the disorganization and the chaos, and I learned a lot about how to really put on a show, a high intensity show, dynamic show, and how to groove really, really, really well. Because I mean, the bass player was George Ford, who used to be Alan Parsons' first call bassist.
Wow.
So he was my bass player, you know, and I'm this 23-year-old kid going, wow, this is something else. It's just all stars, you know, really, really good players. And I was the only one who could stay sober.
So it must have really got you seasoned for what was to come.
It was the beginning of the seasoning.
And then I know you played on records for other people, like recording sessions and stuff like that before you got into the band full time. I know Sue Medley for sure. I was a fan of hers, and I know you played with her.
Yeah, I did a couple of years with Sue. I played a track or two, I think, on her debut album. She had gone down to Indiana to record it with Mike Wanchik, who's a member of John Mellencamp's group.
Okay.
And so she used much of that crew to record, but they wanted to add some tracks afterwards to kind of flesh out the album. So we did a couple of tracks while on the road at Le Studio in Quebec, outside Montreal, in Morin Heights, and that's where Rush used to record quite a bit. So it seemed like paradise for us young musicians. Oh, Neil Peart used to be right here. Very big deal. And we were very young. We're kind of starstruck just by the building and the grounds,
I've actually been there myself once, and I was just amazed. Like, you wouldn't know where it is unless you knew your way around the place. Like, it's really hidden away.
And we got there on a tour bus, so I couldn't find it again with a gun to my head. I have no idea. We just kind of tumbled out of the tour bus and loaded our equipment into the studio, and then did an all day, all night session, and came out with a couple of good songs. That was it.
And when did Spirit come knocking? And how did you meet those guys beforehand? And
I got a call from somebody. I can't remember if it was John or maybe Linda. They said they're looking for a drummer. Do you want to come down and see us play to tell us if you're interested? Because by that time, I built myself up into I had a good profile in Vancouver. I had a good reputation and profile in Vancouver. And I worked with Paul Hyde from Paolas and Rock and Hyde, of course. And he recommended me to Spirit because I was his drummer, and he had produced one of the Spirit records as well, which I think was Tripping Up the Stairs, possibly.
Okay.
And I had been working with Sue Medley, We're Dug in the Slugs. I did a year and a half, 2 years with, feeling like Wally retired, and I covered for him. And so, it's a lot of road work, a lot of experience, a lot of one-nighters, a lot of consistency required. And then, so I got this call, and they said, come down to see us. And they were at the PNE, the Pacific National Exhibition. And I watched them, and I went, wow, what a cool group. Just imagine what a drum kit could do to this sound.
Right.
Give it a little more backbone, because at that point, it was just John jumping around with an acoustic guitar, trying to keep the pulse going while leaping and bounding around the stage. And there's a lot of tempo sagging and a lot of dynamic ups and downs that probably weren't as effective as they could have been if they were a little more consistent. So I immediately knew what I'd like to try to do if I went to audition, so to speak. And I think they auditioned quite a few guys, but I got the gig because I was so enthusiastic about it, I think. And I was really excited about the thought of group songwriting instead of just copying somebody else's playing.
Right.
Go to LA, record the album, come back and get some Vancouver guy to just cover the parts. I just
right.
It's fun when you're 22, 24 years old, but at some point you have to get involved in the creation and have a real band concept and really become a thing, a real tangible
unit.
Yeah, unit or
Team,
artistic
maybe?
entity.
Yeah. I'm gonna try and share a picture if you don't mind. Maybe you could comment on it.
Uh-oh.
Oh, that's some ticket stubs from some of
Oh
the
yeah.
shows I've seen you guys
Cops
play.
Coliseum, right? We played Cops.
That was the during the Grey Cup.
Oh, right.
It was a big. I think you were on the bill with the Killjoys and the Leahy family.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I remember that.
And then you used to come to Toronto right around after Christmas a few years in a row, and I went to Lee's Palace a couple of times to see you there. And I saw you at the Horseshoe during one of their anniversary shows. I think you guys did like 3 nights there or something. Or
yeah.
It was
no,
we
did like 5 or 6 nights at the Horseshoe.
Yeah, those were amazing shows. I think Tobin had just joined you guys at the time, but
that's possible.
But here's an old one. I don't know. Would you have been in the band at this time?
Well, there's a drum kit back there, so I'd say yes.
Like, would you have played live with them before you recorded with them, or?
Oh, heavens, yes. Oh, yes. That's why the recordings were so punchy and cohesive, is because we had well rehearsed them. They were extant pieces of music that we just recorded, you know.
That was taken in Mississauga, actually, before Matthew joined the band. At the Waterfront Festival. That's where. That's where I lived for most of my life, and.
Right. Yeah, I remember.
Just a thrill to see you guys there. And there's my wife and I meeting you there, actually.
And I'm yelling at somebody, or.
Look, maybe there's Hugh in the background. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, Hugh in the background, and. Jeez, and there's Jeffrey in the far left. Oh yeah, that one. I've got that one hung on my wall. I'm just looking at it right now.
It's a beautiful picture.
Well, I think it's the only picture I've ever seen with all of us in one shot. Even though I'm looking at my toes or something.
Or checking your phone.
Everybody's looking down.
Oh, no, that's something else. Sorry.
That's definitely not us.
No. Anyway, so the first album you recorded with them, like fully, it wasn't Save This House. It was the one after that, wasn't it?
It was Go Figure. Yeah, in fact, they had been touring Save This House in Britain with they did a number of shows with the Wonder Stuff. Okay. And they really felt that they just couldn't reach the back of the house. They didn't have sufficient power to really fill up the room. They figured we need we need the backbone, the spine, and we need a drummer. That's where they decided, and they had done a couple of songs with drums on Save This House. So that's when they decided to start looking for a drummer full time, and so we started working on songs and demoing songs up at this. It was a little office space above the YMCA on Burrard Street in Vancouver called the Basile Studio, and it was Barney Bentall and well, I guess it was Barney's little demo studio, and they had a little 8-track recorder there, and we demoed some stuff. And Barney and Colin, and we just did a bunch of stuff, and I think some of it at one point ended up on some compilation album and some EP of other stuff. But we did a ton of stuff, and we kind of learned to write as a team there, and learned how to work the drums into the sound picture, and learned how to arrange songs. And after about 6 months of that, then we went into one of the big studios in Vancouver. I think it's called the Greenhouse now, but it was called Vancouver Studios at the time. And it was probably the nicest tracking room in town, and we went and did Go Figure there.
Did you is the studio still there?
Yeah, it's called Greenhouse now, I believe.
It's called Greenhouse now. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you toured that quite a bit, I imagine.
Yeah, that one really got a kick. We had some radio, and we had some videos, and there was interest from the record company. There isn't always interest from record companies. They sometimes they sign you with the best of intentions, and then they go, it's not what we expected, so we're just going to give it the minimal push. But they seemed very interested in. And they did a pretty good job, and we did a lot of in-stores and a lot of we really worked it hard, and it did really well,
And who are some of the guys?
Gold soon.
Who are some of the guys you might have toured with back then? Like, I know you've got a lot of great Canadian band friends over the years. You've toured with quite a few. I mean, the Hip being one of them, and
yeah, we did 2 tours with the Hip, and they were fun because, man, people like them.
Yeah.
You know, really, really crazy, dedicated fans. That's where we met. I think that's where we first started doing shows with Blue Rodeo on a regular basis. That's where we made friends with them. I remember seeing them. We played together in Buffalo, actually, and that's where we may have met them before, but that's where I sort of felt the click happen, you know.
Yeah, they seem to click with every band they've ever had open for them or play with them. Like, I've seen them twice, and they always invite the opening band to come out and play with them at the end of every show, which I find great because it just means they're fans of who they bring out on the road with them.
That ain't no hat rack at the top of Cuddy's neck, you know?
Yeah.
He's a very intelligent guy.
For sure.
He's very talented, very intelligent, and he understands better than pretty well anybody else in the country about how to use his personality to further his career and the group's reputation. And I mean, he's kind of, over the last 35, 40 years, he's made himself into the Archbishop of Canadian music. I always call him the Archbishop. Not to his face, but
no. Yeah. One of the best vocalists I think I've ever heard. Like, he's got such an amazing, calm delivery to the way he sings, and it just sounds so effortless, but it's amazing.
Yeah, he is effortless. He's got a beautiful voice, and that little cry in his voice. He's very gifted, and he's a good guy, and he can be depended upon for things outside of the performance.
And him and Greg are two of the best songwriting, probably one of the best songwriting teams in Canada. I put them right up there with Jeff and John too.
Well, they certainly have the success to support that. Yeah, much beloved, and you know they've also got some real tension between them. I don't know if that's publicly known, but there's a tension there, and that tension causes a dynamism that really does throw off some wonderful sparks.
For sure, but they seem to be able to split apart once in a while, do their thing on the side, and still come back together and be a great band.
Well, yeah, after you've been doing it as long as they have, or Spirit for that matter, you just, coming back together is effortless. It's like, you know, you work away and then you come home to your wife, you know, and it's not like you have to reacquaint yourself with your wife. Your wife just says, take out the garbage, let's go. Take the kids to school. It just keeps going, right?
And I guess things must have really started rolling for you guys with Faith Lift.
Yeah, and I think the reason that they did was that we really found a new direction in sound picture and songwriting and arrangement capability, and we field tested every one of those songs so intensely because we were touring all the time. We weren't making much money. We were touring all the time to get the word out and to get up a critical mass, you know, to get to the tipping point. And we took all of the songs from Faith Lift and played them live. And so by the time they even got onto record, the live audience fans knew the songs, and they were really tempered well. We didn't have to do any tweaking of arrangements because we had already arranged them. I don't remember any major song changes. We didn't have to gut them and say, double the chorus and let's get rid of that verse. Right. And you know, that's all the normal stuff that happens when you're doing a record, but we pretty well just sat down and recorded them.
It's an amazing record. Like, the sound is phenomenal. The songwriting, it's one of the few CDs I can put on and just listen to the whole thing without, you know, skipping forward or anything. It's just, every song is solid, and it's amazing sounding album too. Yeah,
Michael Phillip Voivoda, our producer, we hadn't had quite as much lovey-dovey feelings to our previous producer, particularly me. I was dissatisfied, and so John suggested Michael Phillip, and I said, I don't know who this guy is, and so, you know, we listened to a few things, and I went, sounds good. And he came in, and he was the perfect guy for us. times. He understood that we wanted to retain a group identity, but he understood that I, for example, I wanted the grooves to be very tight. I wanted the tones to be very pleasant to the ear. He had it all. He knew what to do. He's for my money, I think he's probably one of the top 5 music producers in the history of Canada.
For sure. Like, I mean, he really brought out a good sound in you guys, for sure. But
and he's done it for other groups in spades. You know, his track record it speaks for itself. So,
who are some of the other guys he might have worked with that you were familiar with?
That he did?
Yeah.
Well, he did all the big BNL stuff, all the Bare Naked Ladies stuff.
Right.
So, you know, that alone, you know, the whole universe was like that's him. You know, that's their 30-second long worldwide number 1 hit, and that's Michael. You know, you'll have to talk to Ed about Michael. I'm sure he feels as strongly about him as I do. So, and he's done countless other things, and he did recently the Jerry Cans from Northwest Territories. Are they from NWT?
I believe so.
You don't want to.
I don't want to say for sure because I'm not 100% sure, but.
That much lauded album. It's won a lot of awards, as it should. But he's become the kind of guy who he's changed with the times, and it used to be okay. I can produce for you, and that's what I'm going to do. And then everything changed, and budgets shrank, and now he uses his extreme photography skills to do all the artwork. He does all the pre-pro. He does all the production. He does all the mixing. He's just like a one-man army. So,
good guy to have on your side when you're putting something together.
Sweet, understanding, Buddha-like man.
Right.
I love him. I've always felt very strongly about him.
And I guess I'm going to get to where I first saw you guys was at the Festival of Friends in Hamilton, I think '96. And I don't know if you had been touring Two-Headed or the one with the symphony. Which one did you guys do first? I'm not sure which came out after.
Two-Headed, I think.
Two-Headed. And I don't know if you would have been touring that or not, but I remember getting the symphony record and Two-Headed together at the same time when I bought them. So I don't think they were too far apart in the releasing stages, but I remember seeing you then. Who worked with you on Two-Headed?
We sort of produced that to some degree ourselves, and we had a guy named Ken Marshall, engineering and producing, and that one didn't hit the mark as much as I had wanted it to. I
really like the sound on it myself, personally.
Do you?
I do. Yeah. It's one of my favorite records that you guys ever did, actually. So there's some of the songs on there just really stood out to me.
Yeah, I believe that some of the songwriting was really excellent, and it just needed, to my personal view, it needed a little more love in the refinements. If it would have been a little more refined sounding, and if we would have spent a little more time shaving off some rough edges, I think it would have come out a little more like Faith Lift. If we would have had Michael, it would have sounded like Faith Lift 0.2, and then it would have been of great service to us within the long picture of how Spirit albums sound.
Right. And then when did you start doing the symphony shows, like to do the symphony record?
Well, that's another part of the problem, is that we were writing for the symphony at the same time that we were writing for Two-Headed. So it was a double slam, and it was really intense there for about a year, like all hands on deck for about a year straight. So by the time we did our first night of the symphonic performance, I came off stage such a dish rag of it, I was exhausted because we've been working nonstop, and the specter of this terrifying symphonic performance it turned out to be a paper tiger, but we were really intimidated by the process because it was a symphony, our first time with a symphony. It was a hometown symphony. It was a live television show.
Yeah, that's I remember seeing that. Yeah.
And a live album, all at the same time. We had never put ourselves under so much pressure. It was like, you cannot screw up. You must not screw up. So I mean, you're never supposed to screw up, but the feeling in the air of "don't cock up" was so powerful.
Right.
Even I, you know, like just nerveless. I was a little, and that never happens to me. I'm never, you know, my belief is that if you have stage fright, it's because you're not properly prepared.
Right.
So just prepare.
And it's amazing that you did that symphony record all new songs. Like it wasn't
All new
just a
songs.
live performance of all your old stuff, all your classic stuff. It was all new material, which and another good, you know, your song, the songwriting is still right there. Like every song on that album is just amazing.
I think we would have probably been wise. We did record many of the moldy oldies with the symphony. We played them and recorded them, but they didn't end up on that album. And I think, in retrospect, it might have been good to do one or two and add them in there just to leaven it, you know, just to give the fans who weren't total keeners a little something to grab.
And then the instrumental Christmas Eve has always been a favorite of mine. Was that done in the studio or was that done live?
Yeah, it was. It was an afterthought. Really, we thought we needed something, and so we did Christmas Eve, and it was that was seat of the pants, but a very satisfying seat of the pants. You know, it just like,
Right.
who are we going to do? We know the song. We rehearsed our part. We had I think George Blondheim wrote up an arrangement. He came in, played piano, and we had Cam Wilson led the string quartet. The wonderfully talented Cam Wilson, and I don't know. We just sat down in a room, and I remember we were going to do it without click track, which is dangerous because you know,
Right.
Spirit of the West is a notoriously speedy, uppy band, and I was going, guys, come on, work with me here. I just want this. And John said, no, it doesn't sound natural. So I went, okay, we'll give it a go. And John started playing ding, 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 and he kept getting faster and faster and faster and faster until at one point it kind of almost doubled in speed. And I went, well, I followed him and we did all this together. We went back and listened. And I went, I'll be damned. It's an accelerando, but it sounds fantastic.
Right.
You know, and it was totally accidental. John didn't even notice. And I'm going, John, we're twice as fast once the band kicks in after your intro. And he said, oh, really? Maybe we should use the click. And I went, nah, actually, I kind of like it. And he said, really? Okay. So then we recreated it multiple takes with that accelerando until it really gave you that horse ride
Right.
feeling, because it's supposed to be a sleigh ride mentality, and starts slow and gets faster and faster and faster. And I really enjoyed it. So it was a fluky, wonderful thing. And we had all these bodies in the studio. Everybody's over the control board and looking through the windows, and it was a real Christmassy vibe. And it was months and months and months before Christmas, so I liked it. My buddy Pete McCormick was there, the songwriter and author and Oscar nominated filmmaker. He was hanging out there. He's going, it sounds good. And I what a lovely day.
It's a beautiful sounding song. Like I play it at Christmas every year. It's one of my
Yeah,
musts.
we do too.
So it's one of my musts to play at Christmas every year. It doesn't need lyrics. It has a great Christmassy feel to it right off of it.
No, you see the family coming to visit. You really see that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I guess I saw your last performance with Linda in Niagara Falls.
New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve. Yeah, I remember.
Oh, that was a tough one.
I bet. Like, I mean, she'd been with you since. Well, she wasn't there from the beginning, but she was there for quite some time.
She's there in the middle section, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, she's a multi-instrumentalist too, and I keep track of her. It sounds like she's doing pretty well in the U.S. right now.
Yeah, and just outside of Nashville, I think. And I don't know precisely where she lives, because when I've communicated with her, it's been by email. So.
But it wasn't anything like. It wasn't like a nasty split or anything like that. It was a good.
No.
It was a good amicable split.
Yeah.
And Tobin didn't miss any he fit right in right away. It seems like it anyway. Because I didn't notice. I mean, I noticed he brought a lot to the band.
Oh yeah, he brought a lot to the band, but he was so young when he joined. I think he was like 10 or something, and he was very shy, very not so much anymore. He's in there like a dirty shirt with the rest of us. But I mean, you know us well enough to know that we're extremely powerful personalities, and he would sit on that tour bus with his hands on his knees, looking down at the floor. And he would just sit and look into the middle distance towards the floor for hours at a time. And I remember trying to fire up some conversation with him. Yep. Nope. 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 And I remember at one point I said, okay, I give. And I went down and watched TV in the other lounge. And now, he opened up and he's become such an integral part of our family. He's just so beloved and so talented and such a go-to for so many things. But at the beginning, he was just terrified.
But yeah, he didn't even have family back then, did he? Was he married?
No, no. God, no. He was just a kid. Just a kid. He just sort of won this lottery. He sort of, I called him up after we kind of done I guess you'd call it an audition, but it was a rehearsal. But to him, it was like the big, oh my God, I hope I can measure up meeting, And I went home afterwards, and then I called him up on the phone, and I just said, hey, it's Vince from Spirit. I just wanted to tell you how delighted I was with how prepared you were and how good a job you did. And there's long, like 4-second silence, and he went, thanks.
He's such a good musician, though. Like, I mean,
he's so, you wouldn't even believe his knowledge of theory. He's brilliant. He's really brilliant. He's a secret weapon.
For sure. Like, I mean, how many instruments does he play?
You'd be wiser to ask, are there any that he doesn't?
I always wanted to hear him and Hugh have a bass off.
Yeah. Well,
who's the better bass player?
Well, Hugh McMillan is one of the most, what's the word, balletic and gymnastic bass players you'll ever see in your life. It's remarkable. Like, nobody else plays like Hugh. The only person I've ever heard that kind of sounds like Hugh is Louis Cato from Colbert's band.
Really?
Yeah. His electric bass playing is at that level and has been for 35 years.
Another multi-instrumentalist too, Hugh is. Like, how many instruments does he play? Like,
I'm just relieved that he's a sucky drummer.
Because he might have taken your job.
I'd take everybody's gig.
Right.
Yeah. If he could play drums as well as he plays bass, who knows what would have happened to human music.
Well, even Jeffrey plays multiple instruments, and it always blew my mind about you guys. Like, I can't even play the guitar well enough in front of people. Like, I can't imagine being able to play 2 or 3 instruments that well in front of people.
I think we were one of the first bands that crossed into the mainstream that was that multi-instrumental.
Yeah.
That wasn't as common back in the old days.
No.
I mean, in the folk world, there was always somebody that had a bouzouki and a dulcimer and this kind of stuff. This was always happening in the folk world. But mainstream pop music, there weren't a ton of people swapping instruments all the time.
For sure.
It was rarer, more rare. I wanted to say about Tobin, whose nickname is the Gull. He's Gull. Because of his dietary habits. His specialty is upright bass, playing the doghouse. And he's a beautiful doghouse player. And Hugh doesn't play doghouse at all.
Really? He doesn't?
Yeah. So, I mean, you throw a double bass at Gull and say, play with this jazz pianist, and he's beautiful. Really, really, really good.
And he played piano and accordion. Just
very good keyboardist. Yeah, very good keyboardist. He can sing. Let's say that.
Well, I remember seeing that a couple of times when you both tried to do that to Moray. Or no, it was Sonny and Cher.
Sonny and Cher.
He sang a couple of lines of that. He didn't do too bad.
Oh, no. I always teased them about that. I would always try and manipulate it so that it gave him the hardest and the highest lines. So he sounded, stretched and everything. It was always good fun.
And he was with you right till the end, and that shows how well he fit in with you guys.
Oh yeah, there was no changing him. We understood even when he was so shy and staring at the ground. We knew what we had musically. He was just he was kind of the glue, he very much glue. He never looked for glory, he never looked for the spotlight. He just did what it took.
For sure. I can't tell you how much I miss seeing you guys play.
Well, I miss playing, but I'm done now.
This software is not giving me much more time left to do this interview, but I want to talk about these.
Ah, yes.
I haven't got the new one yet, but believe me, I'll be getting it ASAP.
There they are. Books 1 and 2 of my trilogy.
I can't wait to get the second one.
That's it right there.
I'll have to go check Indigo pretty soon here in Charlottetown.
Yes, so. Please do, and pass the word around because not only I'm working on book 3 as we speak. I'll probably turn my attentions to it after we're done here.